Hey everyone, all you Disney nerds, fanatics, and dreamers out there. It's George, also known as your Disney family man. And joining me today is my very good friend out on the West Coast, Christopher, also known as OrangeGrove55. How you doing, Christopher?
I'm doing great, George. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Always great to have you. And you're actually my first guest on my channel, so this is awesome.
Nice. Congratulations on the new channel, by the way.
Thank you very much. And for all you who don't know, Christopher, with his Orange Grove 55 YouTube, great Disney content. He involves pretty much the Disney community to ask questions, to get in the conversation. I'll have a link down below with his YouTube channel, and you could also follow him on Twitter. But I thought today this was actually an idea brought on by my son that we were sitting watching a lot of Star Wars YouTube. Star Wars YouTube. What am I saying? Star Wars YouTube. Star Wars content on YouTube, excuse me. And he had never seen the new trailer that just came out. And I thought you would be a perfect guest on because you got to see the trailer for Star Wars Episode 9 at the D23 Expo, which I'm completely jealous over because that was the only panel that I could not get in. It was like lock shut, throw away the key. And that's when you and I met briefly, and you got to tell me a little bit about it. And you said to me that you have to see it, and I saw it for the first time, and I was just gobsmacked. It was like, where did this come from? So, I mean, like, what was your first reaction to it? Because I could imagine the whole entire auditorium when they saw that trailer.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Like the whole experience for the whole panel was pretty intense. When we got there, sitting like 4 rows ahead of us was Bob Iger. So immediately, even upon sitting down, I'm already like blown away. Like there's Bob Iger within like 15, 20 feet away from where we're sitting, Wow. It was pretty crazy. But the funny thing is that, for the Disney Plus streaming panel, they waited until like the very, very end to do any of the Star Wars stuff, So you had to sit through the whole like 2 hours worth of material to get to Star Wars. So for this movie panel, I thought it was going to be kind of a similar approach. I thought we'd sit down and it's going to be a long haul until we hit the Star Wars stuff. And it was actually the exact opposite. Like right out the gate, they hit us with Lucasfilm.
Oh,
and
wow.
It kind of surprised me. It was the very first thing they presented. And at the panel itself, they didn't really announce too much. It was JJ came out and Kathleen Kennedy, and they were just like, yeah, we're working on the film, and, we're really excited, and, the usual kind of PR stuff, right? And JJ comes out and says, we don't have a trailer for you yet. We're still working on the film, but, we can't leave you with nothing. And so what they gave us was that sizzle reel, or whatever they're calling it, where it's like, the whole saga. It's like a trailer for the whole saga. And at the end is a little bit of the new stuff from Rise of Skywalker. So I'm sitting here watching it, and I'm like, okay, this is a nice little tribute, but I didn't expect any real new footage because JJ kind of set it up like this was just a little something because you guys are here, And when it got to that end with the Rise of Skywalker stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh. And then the very end with Dark Rey, and she flips open that double-bladed like red lightsaber. I was in shock, absolute shock. I turned to the girl next to me. I have no idea who she is. And I'm like, was that Rey? Because it took me like a minute to even process, And I'm like, was that Rey? She's like, yeah, oh my God, what's going on? The whole room was like, what the heck is going on with this? We were just kind of blown away, and it was so much to process at once. It was incredible. It really did throw me for a loop.
Yeah, I watched the trailer online, and I actually had to rewind back to that last little part because I had to do a double take myself. And I had to say, this was Rey, right? I was like telling myself this in my mind. This is Rey. I think it's Rey. And I thought it was so funny that when my son saw it, he said, she almost has a Darth Maul lightsaber, but he said, it's more like a flip phone. It's like she just had one and it just like flipped into two, and I thought that was kind of clever. But yeah, so I kind of thought that from you seeing the trailer firsthand, and with the movie on the horizon coming out in December, and now that Galaxy's Edge has opened, for anyone out there who hasn't been to Galaxy's Edge yet, it's open at both Disneyland and the Walt Disney World Resort. Excuse me. And now that it's open, what happens is they kind of have where it's like two sides to the story. You could, there's the light side and there's the dark side, and Kylo Ren and the stormtroopers walk around interrogating people, interrogating guests, and they cannot cross over to the light side, nor will Rey and Chewbacca cross over to the dark side. It's like they have their own sections where they'll be at. So, and it just kind of dawned on me of that if Rey does become evil, or evil to an extent where, because sometimes trailers can be deceiving. You could think, okay, she's going to be fully evil and that's it. She has to be destroyed, or she may turn back good. But I guess the question came to me was, how will this now alter Galaxy's Edge after the movie is out and the real truth becomes a reality?
Well, it depends. I mean, from what I understand on the Star Wars, canon timeline, Galaxy's Edge falls right after Last Jedi, before Rise of Skywalker. So if Disney stays true to the timeline where they set Galaxy's Edge on, it shouldn't change it at all. Even if she goes full bad, she goes full on dark side, Galaxy's Edge is still part of that timeline right after Last Jedi. So it'll still be the good Rey, because at that time period in Star Wars, she was a good person, or she was light side, right? But that depends on how true they want to stay to the timeline. I mean, maybe they want to play with the timeline and promote Rise of Skywalker. Who knows? They might change that. They might, kind of mess with what time period this is. But I personally think that they're probably not going to do that. I think they're probably going to keep it, good Rey. And I think in the movie itself, I think we'll see her really struggle with this light and dark. We know Palpatine's coming back, and he's like the grand puppet master. He's probably going to have some part in all of that. But I think at the end of the day, she will stay, on the light side. So in terms of like its effect on Galaxy's Edge, no, I don't think it'll affect it. Like, I don't think we're going to see like evil Rey walking around or anything like that. I think they'll keep it, light side Rey, even if she goes down a dark path in those films, or in that film.
Because there's also to the notion of, now there's going to be questions needing to be answered about Kylo Ren as well. It's like his future is very bleak, because is he going to stay evil, or is he going to turn good? Are they just going to do a complete switcheroo? And it's like, so, I mean, and I actually prefer it that way. I love, especially with the Star Wars franchise, I love how nothing is predictable. It's like, I love the notion of walking into a theater and literally not knowing what to expect.
Yeah, me too. And that's the beauty of Star Wars. And I like this whole idea, the theory of like, because Ben Solo, or Kylo Ren, he kind of idolizes Vader, right? And he sees Vader as like this, is his grandfather, it's his idol. And I like this notion of the possibility in Rise of Skywalker that maybe he learns some new things about Vader. That, it was Anakin's love for Padme and love for his family and wanting to keep her alive that got him, that turned him to the dark side. But it came out of a place of love. Maybe when Kylo learns that, in this next film, if he learns it, maybe that'll turn him to the light. I like that possibility of maybe Kylo coming to terms with the fact that what he thought he knew, he didn't really know. He didn't know the full story. And I think that's a real possibility with Palpatine coming back, where he might put some of those pieces together. It's like, even like Force Awakens, for example, he's talking to Vader's helmet, right? In that movie.
Yes.
That whole thing is kind of suspect, because if you think about it, like, Anakin turned to the light side. He became a Force ghost at the end of Return of the Jedi. You know, he was a light side Force ghost. So who's Kylo talking to? You know, who's he really talking to through that helmet? I mean, the helmet, he's saying from Kylo's perspective, show me the darkness, grandfather, show me the darkness. But it can't be Anakin. He's turned to the light after he died. So maybe it's Palpatine messing with his head through the helmet or something, right? So there's all this potential with this about how maybe Kylo is being fooled and tricked into going dark, and maybe all that will come to light, so to speak, no pun intended, in this next movie, The Rise of Skywalker, and maybe he'll turn to the light side. Maybe he will see what he's doing is wrong, and he realizes he's being manipulated. There's so much potential there. I'm really excited for it.
That is a great point that you actually brought up, to the notion of that always confused me when I saw Force Awakens in theaters. And I actually go back, even when I saw the first trailer, when Kylo said, you know, I will finish what you started. And it showed the Vader helmet with the partial skull in it. And I'm thinking, okay, well, if this is the child of Leia and Han Solo, you know, wasn't it ever told to him growing up that his grandfather did turn back to good? You know, and it was like just that whole notion of that if he was turned good, why would even Kylo even take that chance to say, oh yeah, I'll just talk to Vader because he's still bad. Well, no, he's not bad. And that always made me, you know, think. But now after seeing the Rise of Skywalker trailer, back when they released it at a Celebration, Star Wars Celebration, and I just heard that loud cackle, and I thought, okay, my perception of this whole entire third part of the Skywalker saga, that just like completely blew me away.
Yeah. I was really surprised to hear the Emperor Palpatine cackle and that he was coming back. That was really a huge shock to me. You know, I mean, so far both pieces, both teasers that we've seen, both from Celebration and D23, have ended up really shocking me at the end. Between the Palpatine thing, which blew me away, and then the Dark Rey thing, makes me think, what do they have up their sleeve for the full trailer coming out in October? But it's very, very interesting. I'm of the belief, I really do believe that that Kylo Ren will be redeemed. I feel like they're sort of dropping the breadcrumbs a little bit and kind of hinting at that. He started off bad, but he kind of has that pull to the light. You kind of see a lot of that actually in The Last Jedi with his communications with Rey. You can tell he's really torn on what to do. And I think with Palpatine in the mix in the next movie, I think he's going to come to terms with what he was doing and change. I think he will be redeemed. And also you have to understand, he's really technically, as far as we know, the last like real Skywalker. You know, Luke is dead. You know, Leia's there in the movie still, but I mean, he's like the last of the young Skywalkers that can carry on the Skywalker name. And I would just be very surprised if Disney took the last Skywalker and he just went down as a total jerk. And that's just not I don't think that's a very uplifting way to end the saga. It's almost like they have to redeem him, I think. I mean,
it's like if you go all the way back to episode 1 and you see where this genesis is going to begin with young Anakin, and you're going to go all the way through to episode 9 and say, okay, this is just going to end a complete disaster. And that's it. Lights off. It's done.
Yeah. Well, it'll be very, very interesting to see. And you know, there's a guy, he does YouTube videos, but he also does like print media. Like he has a website. It's called makingstarwars.net, I believe. And the gentleman's name is Jason Ward. And this guy, he very credible source in terms of Star Wars. You know, I mean, he has a really good track record with the past films and his scoops and everything. And what he's hearing is that there's a lot more to Rey's lineage than we know so far. Supposedly, her parents will continue to be nobody, but there's more to the story in terms of her family and where she came from, and maybe her grandparents, and so that's going to be interesting to see how that all pans out. There's a lot of theories on that, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of rumors. I mean, even going back to the novels of how everything is like connected in some way, that you get little bits and pieces of clues of what it's talking about, like the creation of life and everything, and the forming of in the planets and everything, and then you get to this point and it just makes you wonder, okay, so are they setting even everything up in the novels that lead into this final movie, as far as like for the Skywalker saga anyway? And it's, and especially, going back to the other movies, when Palpatine was talking to Anakin about, with the midichlorians and everything, and, creating life and saving a life and everything, and, with Darth Plagueis and his story. Yes. And it just feels like, even though at that time it wasn't being set up for nothing, but that was a great cinematic moment where you could say, okay, you could literally take that and form a whole complete story around it.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's even rumors, and I don't know how true they are because it's Star Wars rumors, there's so much out there, but there's rumors that, because Palpatine was learning on, how to cheat death and how to create life, that maybe he has something to do with the creation of Rey. So, maybe he manipulated the Force, and maybe, her parents were nobody, but Palpatine used, that woman, her mother, as kind of like a, what do they call that? Like a surrogate mother kind of?
Yeah.
Maybe he kind of used that woman to carry Rey, but it was really Palpatine's creation, and that would be a real turning point for Rey if she found out after all of this that she's a Palpatine. I mean, well, how do you come to terms with that? I mean, that would be insane.
I just say, honestly, they need like a Galaxy version of Jerry Springer on that one.
Who's the daddy? Yeah, it's crazy.
Now, that actually brings me to the question, could that have potentially been the case with Anakin? Because going back to episode 1, when Qui-Gon was talking to his mother, and she said there was no father, I was, his everything. And could there have been, because his midichlorian count was even over beyond Yoda's?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there is actually pretty concrete evidence that that's what happened, that Palpatine created Anakin. There's two things that really point to that. One of them is a comic. I think it was a Darth Vader comic. I think it was about 12 or 13 years ago, that actually show Palpatine kind of like hovering over Anakin's mom and doing this. And you can see like her stomach, like he was like forming something in her stomach.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and that was a comic from I think 12 or 13 years ago. And the other thing that points to it, and this is really kind of concrete, is one of the pieces of dialogue that George Lucas cut from Revenge of the Sith was explaining that very situation. Palpatine was telling Anakin, I'm basically your dad. I created you, and this is how I did it. And Anakin is saying that's impossible, But it was a whole back and forth between Anakin and Palpatine about how Palpatine tells Anakin, look, I created you through the Force. But that was cut from the script. So I think it was Lucas's original plan to have that. I don't know why he cut it out, but so there's a lot of evidence pointing though to that, like that's what Lucas wanted, that Palpatine created Anakin. That's why I think it's a good possibility that that's how Rey ended up the way she is. She's so powerful. And
do you think that would actually be brought up in the 9th, or do you think this would only just be the focus of Rey and Ben? Like, do you think anything would be uncovered with as far as the genesis of the Skywalker name itself?
I think so. If it turns out that Rey was created the same way, they would kind of have to bring that up, because not a lot of people know the comic or know the piece of dialogue that was cut from the script and things like that. So they would kind of have to explain, maybe through Palpatine. Palpatine can tell Rey, I created you just like I created Anakin, and this is how I did it. I learned from my master Darth Plagueis how to do this. You're basically my granddaughter, or whatever. Yeah, I could see it coming up for sure. I think in fact the likelihood is pretty high. I really do, because the rumors from the people I trust, like that guy from Making Star Wars, are pointing in that direction of her being a Palpatine. And
that's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah. So we'll see. That's going to be some pretty crazy stuff. I mean, it's going to be pretty crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and as I said, I love a good story where they don't give you practically what it's going to be, because even going back to The Last Jedi, I mean, I pretty much thought, everything that they showed, in the trailer, that's pretty much what we were going to get.
Right.
And I actually think 95% of that trailer was nothing what was in the film.
Yeah.
And not saying it was a bad film.
Yeah.
It was just, so I think from there on in, I just now see like the perception of Star Wars that I'm just going in, no matter what is shown to me, I'm going in with an open mind.
Yeah, and that's all you can really do, and that threw a lot of people off for The Last Jedi. I liked the movie a lot, but a lot of people didn't like it because it went in a direction that they just really were not expecting. They were expecting something totally different. And Rian Johnson is very different than J.J. Abrams. J.J. Abrams is kind of cut from the same cloth of like a Robert Zemeckis or a Steven Spielberg, or, he's kind of that kind of director. He's a summer blockbuster kind of guy. Okay. Very classic Star Wars director, I think, Rian Johnson is not that guy. No. He's an artiste. He does a lot of small.
He's a Francis Ford Coppola.
Right. Exactly. He's much more of an independent, artsier filmmaker. And we got a much artsier Star Wars movie, I think. A little,
I think as far as the fans go, as like the diehard Star Wars fans, I think that The Last Jedi will have a much bigger presence and appreciation in time after everyone has seen Episode 9.
I completely agree.
I think that is where literally the stage is set. I mean, The Force Awakens was, but I think The Last Jedi is where this is all going, where she even had the connection with Luke. Right. She went down into the cave with, with the illusions of everything. Like,
oh yeah, and the snaps.
And then she approaches the wall where she sees the silhouette of her parents, but it joins as one, and it's just her reflection.
Yeah.
And then especially when Luke says, I've seen this power once before. It didn't scare me then, but it does now. So what is he implying? What is he referring to?
Right.
And then just seeing this trailer, it's like, okay, well, now we kind of know.
Yeah. It's going to be very, very interesting. And I think you're right. I think people will appreciate The Last Jedi more once we get the context of the whole trilogy with Episode 9 there, and how we can see how it ends. I think Episode 8 will make more sense to people, because a lot of people, this is one critique people have, a lot of fans have with the Disney era sequel trilogy, is that they feel like there wasn't a plan. JJ did his movie with Force Awakens. Ryan came in and did a whole different thing with his movie. So a lot of fans are feeling like, well, there's no plan. They're just kind of each doing their thing. And I think that they're right and they're wrong in that. I think they're right in the sense where I think that there is a lot of creative freedom. I think Rian Johnson and JJ are able to do what they want to do. And I don't think every single aspect of every single movie has been mapped out. I don't think that at all. But what I do think they did was I think they had a beginning point mapped out and an end point and where they want to end up mapped out. And basically it's up to these directors to get to that point. So the beginning and the end is set, and then JJ and Ryan have to figure out the middle. Is I think essentially what happened. So, you know, there's a plan, but I just don't think everything was mapped out to a science. You know, I think that there was a lot of flexibility on how to get to the end result, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And this may just be my gripe with just, you know, people commentating and critiquing and giving their opinion, which is fine. Everyone has their own likes, dislikes, opinions on everything. But it just seems like to the notion of if Ryan would have went down the same path that JJ did, there would have been a gripe about that.
Right.
We want something different. We want something new. We want something fresh.
Right.
You know? And that's what he took the risk and he did it. And I still think the route that he took was for the better, because that JJ is now back in the director's chair to now finish this off.
Yeah, no, you're right.
He gave JJ extra material to now bring it to a close.
Yeah, no, you're right. And he forced JJ's hand, because the biggest criticism, like you touched upon, was that The Force Awakens was too much like, it was like a rehash of A New Hope. It was too safe, right?
Yes.
So Rian Johnson came in and shook everything up, mixed it all up, threw it around, and completely turned it on its head. And that kind of forces JJ now. You know, he can't go down the predictable route anymore because Ryan kind of blew it up, right?
Yeah,
so it kind of forces JJ's hand now to get more creative with Rise of Skywalker. I think it was definitely a good thing, because I think if it was JJ all the way through, I think we would have got a very predictable trilogy, for better or worse. I think it would have been much more predictable. I think with Ryan going in there and blowing it all up in the middle, it made JJ a better filmmaker. It's going to force him to do a better job in episode 9. He has to get more creative now. He can't do the status quo, because the film right before this one turned everything on its head, you know?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And it's almost like going even back to George Lucas himself, that it was sworn to secrecy when the revealing that Darth Vader was actually Luke's father. I mean, nobody knew that was coming, like when it first was released in theaters. And if memory serves me correctly, I remember hearing a story that they said even with the script that at the time, the actors didn't even know what was going on.
Wow.
Because they had a different dialogue for Vader in that moment. And they had James Earl Jones go back and re-record it. So when it was released in theaters, it was completely blown out of everyone's perspective.
That's incredible. Well, they did a similar thing with Endgame, with Avengers Endgame. The Russo brothers, they filmed a couple of key scenes different ways in case there were leaks. Like I think the funeral scene for like when they're all at that house and they're mourning Tony Stark.
Yes.
That was filmed, I believe it was that scene. That was filmed as a funeral.
By the way, spoilers, people, for whoever have never seen Endgame. I'm sure you have, but yes, Tony Stark died.
Yeah, Tony Stark died. Spoilers. But that scene, I think the Russos filmed it as a funeral and a wedding.
Yes.
And it was specifically made that way to throw people off in case there were any leaks. So, you know, it's kind of pays homage to what George did with Star Wars, the original trilogy. And I'm sure they're doing the same thing here with Rise of Skywalker. They're probably filming or leaking stuff that's incorrect on purpose. So when you get in there, you're like, what the heck just happened? I was not expecting this.
And they do that for the cast and crew as well. They literally, I think, especially for Tom Holland, that they literally wrote a completely whole entire, that it could actually be a movie in itself.
Yeah.
The script that they handed him, because it was completely false. The only parts that were correct were his lines. Everything else was false.
Poor Tom, man. That guy, he leaks stuff right and left. He's so funny. He's really such, not to go on a tangent or anything, but he is. I really like him as a person. I think he's really hilarious, and I would love to see him. I would love to see him get a role in Star Wars. I think he would be phenomenal in that.
That would be cool.
He would be great.
Yeah, him and Benedict Cumberbatch together.
Yes.
As like when they're doing their interviews and stuff, I mean, Benedict's just sitting there like ready to just like put the hand over the mouth. It's like, hush.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's so funny. He would be so great for Star Wars too. I think he has a really fun personality, and he has a way of hyping these movies unintentionally. I think even like his personality just sells it, you know.
And it's great to see that, you know, it's a bittersweet notion that the Skywalker saga is now and officially coming to an end. But it's also to an exciting point where now the sky's the limit. The galaxy's the limit. You know, unintended, that now new stories could be created and it can create a whole nother saga.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's time to cap this saga off, you know, the Skywalker saga off. I think it's time. I think 9 films, I think, is what George Lucas originally intended. So end it with 9. And now, like you said, the sky's the limit. Now you can go 1,000 years before this into like the Old Republic. You can go 1,000 years after this into some other era. All new characters, all new stories. I mean, really, there's so much potential with it. And it sounds like that's what they're going to be doing. It sounds like that the films that are going to come after this are going to be completely unconnected and detached from the Skywalker saga. And I think that's a good thing. Expand this universe. There's so much they can do with it, you know? Go for it.
And we're already starting to see little glimpses of that with Disney Plus coming out.
Yes.
For anyone out there, if you haven't signed up for Disney Plus or not considering it, I highly recommend do it. Because if you're a Disney fan, a Marvel fan, Star Wars, all the content that Disney has ever made within the 90 plus years of its history will eventually be on this streaming service. And with Disney Plus, I cannot wait for The Mandalorian. I cannot wait. Jon Favreau's already in the midst of writing season 2 when they didn't even get greenlit for season 2 yet. He's writing it. And I can't wait. And then other characters as part of the Star Wars universe are getting their own individual series.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yes, he's coming back. I mean, that was another moment where I was actually part of that.
Really? You were at that? You were at that panel?
I was at that one. And when Kathleen Kennedy came on and she said, "I have a guest," and when Hugh McGregor walked out, and I thought, "Oh, this is it. This has to be. They're not bringing him out just for a tease."
No.
And he just nonchalantly just asked her. He said, "Can you ask me if I'm going to be Obi-Wan Kenobi again?" And she just looks at him and says, "Are you going to be Obi-Wan Kenobi again?" And he just does a little pause and he goes, "Yes, I am." And the crowd just went nuts.
Yeah. I mean, that was, I saw that on YouTube. That's great you were there, man. That's incredible because that panel was fantastic. I watched it online. But that panel was awesome. But the energy in that room when they announced that was off the charts. I mean, it was insane. You can just like, it was palpable. I could feel it through the computer. It was crazy. But I think that to touch upon Kenobi a little bit, if you were to ask me, 2 or 3 years ago, would you want a Kenobi film, right? I would have said, yeah, I want it to be a film. He deserves a film. But you know what? I've kind of changed my tune on that a little bit. I think television, or streaming more specifically, has really upped its game with like Game of Thrones and like, real cinematic shows like that, where they're basically movie quality. I think that a Kenobi story would work better on streaming, and to have like 10 plus hours of really diving in and getting to know this character and what he was doing, after Revenge of the Sith, after Revenge of the Sith, before New Hope. It's gonna be really interesting to dive into that and not just have to compress it into 2 hours. We're gonna have 10 plus hours of this and really get to know the character, and it just works so much better as a streaming service show. In this instance, at least, I think it was a perfect decision. It really was.
It really does, because I have to admit, before I was on the bandwagon, that I was always one for a cinematic film. Anything that had to come out just had to be a cinematic film. And I thought, why would you turn it into a television show? It almost feels like you're diluting it. And then it wasn't until, Netflix became real big, and Hulu, and, with all these other streaming services, and now that Disney's hopping on the bandwagon of streaming. And I thought, yeah, why not? If you really think of it, you're getting a lot more content out of it, a lot more storyline, a lot more dialogue. You can expand it, because with a television show or a series, or, with the streaming, I just feel that you could get a lot more out of, again, what you had said with this particular subject matter. And I think honestly, that's where Star Wars is going to take off more outside of the theater, is through the streaming service.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it also lends itself to more creativity in a way, because when you have these shows, you can get a multitude of directors to come in and film a couple of episodes. And you can really mix and match and kind of like really, experiment. I think you're more free to experiment, like for example, when you have like, the sequel trilogy, right? There's only 3 movies. You got to nail each one, and it's very, like kind of like you have to be very careful on which director you choose. And but with a streaming service, when you have, 15 episodes, you can have, the director from Wonder Woman come in and direct 1 or 2 of those episodes, and there's less risk involved. You can you have more freedom to experiment a little bit. You can try new directors, and it's not the end of the world if that episode doesn't work out. Where you mess up on a director for a sequel, for a saga film, and it's like, oh my God, So there's just a lot more creativity that can be had when you're dealing with the streaming service, because you can bring in all kinds of people to direct these and really experiment and try new things. I think it's really exciting. The guy from the director of Thor Ragnarok, and I apologize if I massacre his name, Tahiti. I'm talking.
Yes, I know exactly.
I'm terrible with his name.
Honestly, I'm right there with you, because anytime I talk about Thor Ragnarok, I just say the director of Thor Ragnarok. I don't even attempt to say his name, because I do apologize. It's really a cool name.
It's an awesome name.
I just can't pronounce it.
I can't pronounce it either. And he's really a cool guy. I like his style, the way he dresses. He's got style. He's really creative, clever. He's gonna be doing a few episodes of The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian. He'll be directing a few.
Yes.
And then Ron Howard's daughter.
I was really surprised at that one.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, this should be interesting.
Yeah. So it opens the door. It's a whole new world with the streaming service and bringing talent in and everything. And you get so much more freedom than you do with the film. So yeah, it's going to be something else. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And a lot more to come with Star Wars. And maybe not as far as like with Galaxy's Edge goes, but I think even to the point with the streaming service, with these new storylines and the new characters, I think that will potentially create more Star Wars lands in the parks, but where it's coming from a different planet.
Yeah, and maybe even a whole different timeline.
Yes.
Yeah, they almost kind of have to do that, I think. I think eventually they will do that because they're going to want to be able to promote current stuff. And if they're doing, let's say, let's just say they do an Old Republic movie in 3 or 4 years, right? Which takes place like thousands and thousands of years before the Skywalkers. You can't just throw those characters into Galaxy's Edge. It doesn't match the timeline. So I think Disney would want to create these new lands with different timelines so they can cross promote these other films they're doing, So, I think they will.
And I think Disney is already kind of getting their feet wet with that type of storyline with Marvel, because they're bringing in like the campuses in the different parks around the globe. They're all going to be different, but yet they're all intertwined.
Yes.
One big story without it actually being the same story.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Same idea,
Yeah.
I got to ask you something. I don't even know if you've heard this yet. It was reported just a few days ago, so it's kind of interesting.
Okay.
It was a fan convention. It was called Fan X. And it was like, I think it was like last week sometime. And Ian McDermott, who plays Emperor Palpatine, and Hayden Christensen, who played Anakin Skywalker, was supposed to appear and do like a panel.
Okay.
Now, word on the street is that Disney threatened to sue Fan X, the convention, whoever's running the convention. They were going to sue them if they didn't pull those two from that panel to cancel it. So they pulled it. So they were unable to speak at the panel. Now, because of that, because Disney has such an aggressive approach in removing Ian McDermott and Hayden from this panel, what do you think that means? Like, do you think that does that kind of point to the fact that maybe Anakin is in this movie and they don't want any of that to leak out?
It doesn't actually surprise me, because I've heard even before they announced the title of Episode 9, a lot of people were thinking, is Hayden Christensen going to come back to reprise his role as Anakin as a Force ghost? And kind of touching upon what we were talking about earlier, when Ben was talking to Vader's helmet and everything, and it's not Anakin, so who is he talking to? And with Sidious being dead as well, and I'm assuming living on through Rey, will Anakin now come back in the form and live through Ben? So it's almost like you have Ben, you have Rey, you have Sidious, you have Anakin.
Yeah.
And it's like that. I wonder, it does draw questions that, especially if he was going to be there with Ian, that if he was in episode 2 and 3 and has nothing to do with this current part of the saga, why would it matter?
Why would it matter? So it was kind of interesting. I don't know if you heard that story or not, but it's been on Twitter, it's been online. Google it, and it's interesting because a lot of people are speculating that this kind of points to the idea that Hayden's going to be in this movie, and that Disney was really, really worried that maybe something would slip, because like we were talking about Tom Holland, like things happen, leaks happen. These are human beings, and sometimes they say something they shouldn't say.
Yes.
And maybe they're just really worried.
And I think also too that when they speak at Disney conventions or something like press releases that Disney holds, Disney has a more tighter grip.
Right.
And what can be said, what cannot be said. Where now, since this was out of their territory, they had no control. So they might have thought, let's stop this before it goes any further.
Yeah, and when they do something at like D23, it comes with an announcement. So, it's not like they're gonna throw Kenobi up on there. I mean, Ewan McGregor up there, and not announce Kenobi, right? Exactly. So, with D23, you have the announcement and then they're there. But with this, with no announcement and they're just there, the possibility of them leaking something they shouldn't leak, you know, it creates
I seriously thought they were going to bring him on stage to talk about a sequel to Christopher Robin.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, that would have been so funny though. If I was Kathleen Kennedy, I would have done that. I would have come out and said, "You have something to announce, you know, Mr. McGregor," and had him say, "Well, we're here to announce the sequel to Christopher Robin 2."
Yes.
And just let the crowd riot for like a minute, and then just, "Oh no, we're kidding," you know.
Because, I mean, like, this is completely off of the Star Wars thing, but that's sort of like what they did at the Disney Plus, where they were announcing that Lizzie McGuire was getting a reboot. And they kind of did, like, this nitpicking, like, teaser type thing, like, oh, we scoured the country, we scouted the globe for different girls that can, you know, play Lizzie McGuire again. And we thought, no, we could only get one girl, and it was Hilary Duff, and they brought Hilary Duff on stage, and like that would have been perfect if they would have done the same thing. Like, and it's like, nah, we're just kidding. It's a Kenobi revival.
that would have been so good. That would have been so funny.
So, I mean, there's a lot to come with Star Wars. I mean, as far as like with the streaming service, in the parks, and even in the theaters. I mean, I still think, you know, there's a lot of potential for, you know, films to come out even after Episode 9 and still be good. And I think as long as the fans keep it alive, and that to not be such sticklers,
yeah,
you know, like go in with an open mind and just take it for what it is. It's entertainment. It's what George Lucas referred to as, it's a space opera. There's going to be drama. There's going to be romance. There's going to be action. It's, you know, so don't just feed off of one type of storyline.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Star Wars fans have a history of really taking things too far, to say the least. I mean, it's been happening for my whole life, and it heated up with the prequels. And it's just as bad. Well, maybe not just as bad, but close to as bad with the sequel trilogy. And everything in the end works out. Now, everyone seems to love the prequels after time has set in. And I'm sure everyone in time, you know, like you said, we're going to all love the sequel trilogy in 20 years. Fans just need to relearn. I think fans need to, like, just breathe a little bit, you know, and just enjoy these for what they are. You're not going to love everything. I don't love all of it, you know, but just kind of enjoy it for what it is, and just sort of go with the flow, you know?
Yes, definitely.
So we'll see, but it's interesting times indeed.
Yes, it really is. Well, I definitely want to thank you for coming on and joining me for this discussion. And as I said, everyone, this is my new channel, Disney Family Man 23. And again, I'm going to have Christopher's link down below at OrangeGrove55. Check him out. And if you want to, you know, write him questions, comments, opinions, he takes all that on Twitter. And he's also doing a lot of Q&As on his channel as well, which are always fun to listen to. And did you have any other final thoughts, statements, opinions, concerns?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. It's always fun talking Disney, Star Wars, the parks with you. I always have a good time. And
I'm hoping you definitely come back on.
I will definitely be back on. And I also want to say congratulations on your new channel.
Thank you very much. And everyone, just don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification icon. I'm going to be coming out with a lot more Disney, Star Wars, Marvel content. Keep an eye out for it. And as I always say, it's never a good day unless it's a Disney day. See everyone.